Have you ever wondered why pulling back from an avoidant sometimes seems to make them think about you even more? It isn't because you're trying to punish them, it's because you've replaced pressure with peace. Many people grow up believing that love is something you prove by constantly pursuing another person. You send the first text every time, explain your feelings over and over, and keep trying to convince them to understand you. It feels like persistence should create closeness. But with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, that approach often has the opposite effect. The harder you chase, the more distance they feel they need. For many avoidants, closeness has never felt completely safe. Instead of bringing comfort, it can feel overwhelming, as though they're losing their independence or being swallowed by someone else's emotions. So the very behaviors you see as loving can unintentionally activate their deepest fears. Everything begins to change when you stop chasing. Instead of reacting from anxiety or fear of losing them, you begin responding from self-respect. Your energy becomes calmer, steadier, and more grounded. Without saying a word, your silence starts communicating something powerful. Instead of asking them to notice you, you're showing that you've chosen to value yourself. That single shift completely changes the emotional dynamic. Avoidant people are often misunderstood. They aren't incapable of loving deeply, and they aren't naturally cold. They simply learned early in life to protect themselves from emotional closeness. Many grew up experiencing love as unpredictable, conditional, or tied to expectations. Affection may have depended on meeting certain standards, or emotional attention may have been inconsistent or overwhelming. Over time, they learned that creating distance felt safer than becoming too emotionally dependent. Now imagine what happens when you stop pursuing someone with those experiences. The pressure disappears. They're no longer feeling the need to defend their independence or prepare for another emotional conversation. Instead of protecting themselves, they finally have room to breathe. And in that quiet space, something unexpected begins to happen. They start noticing. Your absence gives them space to reflect instead of react. It allows them to recognize what's missing because the relationship no longer feels like an obligation they need to escape. It becomes something they can freely choose. That sense of choice matters because avoidants crave emotional safety more than most people realize. They want reassurance that closeness won't erase who they are. When you stop chasing, you're not abandoning them. You're showing that love doesn't have to come with pressure, urgency, or emotional force. It can exist peacefully, consistently, and without desperation. From a psychological perspective, this makes sense. An avoidant nervous system often responds far better to space than to emotional pressure. When you back away, you stop activating their instinct to protect themselves. Instead of seeing you as someone demanding more from them, they begin associating you with calm rather than stress. Ironically, that's what makes your presence more attractive. One of the greatest paradoxes in relationships is that when you stop needing someone to choose you, they often feel safer considering you. That's when they begin remembering the little things. Your emotional stability, your lack of drama, the quiet confidence you showed by walking away without resentment or manipulation. Those qualities leave a lasting impression because avoidants generally trust consistency far more than emotional intensity. Your silence becomes clear evidence of healthy boundaries. Without saying anything, you're communicating a simple message. I'm not trying to control your decisions. I'm not trying to convince you to love me. You're free to come closer whenever you're genuinely ready. That freedom is exactly what many avoidants secretly long for. It allows them to move toward connection at a pace that doesn't feel threatening. There's something beautiful about that. Real love doesn't need constant proof. It simply needs space to be experienced. Healthy connection doesn't force, pressure, or demand. It gently invites. Your silence teaches that love doesn't always have to be loud to be meaningful. Sometimes its greatest strength is found in its quiet confidence. Remaining calm isn't easy. Neither is resisting the urge to defend your worth or fight for someone's attention. But that peaceful space creates transformation for both of you. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your own emotional power. You realize that love isn't about convincing someone to stay. It's about recognizing that your value has never depended on another person's decision. Silence stops feeling empty. It becomes clarity. It's where the truth finally becomes impossible to ignore. You begin seeing that your worth was never measured by how hard you worked to earn love. It has always existed within the way you respect and value yourself. Then something surprising often happens. The avoidant begins feeling your absence. Not because you played games or tried to punish them, but because your energy changed completely. You stopped trying to manage their perception of you. You released the need to control the outcome. And that peaceful detachment is often what finally captures their attention. They begin noticing the space where your presence used to be. Many eventually realize that your love was never what frightened them. It was their own fear of intimacy. That's where the real shift begins. Silence doesn't simply end the pursuit. It challenges the belief that love has to be earned through constant effort. It shows both people what healthy love actually looks like. Freedom without emotional distance, closeness without control, space without emotional abandonment. If you've decided to stop chasing someone who struggles with intimacy, don't rush to fill the silence. Stay grounded. Allow your peace to speak louder than repeated explanations ever could. Let your calm remind them that genuine love doesn't need to fight for permission to exist. Sometimes the strongest expression of love is never spoken aloud. It's simply felt. One of the most difficult realities in relationships with avoidant partners is that even sincere love can sometimes feel overwhelming to them. You may be patient, supportive, and completely genuine, but if you're constantly trying to close the emotional gap, they may experience that care as pressure instead of comfort. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, being expected to perform emotionally can reopen old wounds connected to vulnerability, disappointment, or emotional pain. That's why one of the most healing messages you can offer isn't, "I love you, please let me in." It's something much gentler. "I accept who you are, and I'm not here to change or rescue you." Those simple words immediately reduce their emotional defenses because they communicate something many avoidants have rarely experienced in life: acceptance without expectations. You're quietly telling them, "I understand what you're carrying, and I'm not here to change who you are." That kind of love reaches far beyond emotions. It creates a sense of safety that their nervous system can actually recognize. To understand why this matters, think about how an avoidant experiences intimacy. Their desire for love is real, but deep emotional closeness often feels physically overwhelming. Over the years, their mind has learned to associate vulnerability with losing security rather than finding it. That's why constantly trying to convince them, rescue them, or prove your love often produces the opposite result. Instead of feeling cared for, they begin feeling trapped inside emotions they don't know how to manage. Their instinct is to create distance, not because they stopped loving you, but because they're trying to regain a sense of balance. Everything begins to change the moment you stop trying to repair them. You silently communicate that they don't have to earn your acceptance by becoming someone different. You allow them to exist without constantly feeling evaluated or pressured. That is where authentic connection starts. Real intimacy isn't created because someone changes to deserve love. It grows when people finally feel safe enough to be themselves. Ironically, that feeling of safety is often what encourages genuine growth. Acceptance opens hearts that pressure only causes to close. This is something many people misunderstand about avoidant attachment. They aren't running away from love itself. They're trying to escape emotional pressure that's been mistaken for love. More than anything, they want to know they'll still be respected, even when they're imperfect or need space. When your energy shifts from trying to break down their walls to simply offering calm presence, they begin relaxing around you. You become someone who doesn't criticize their need for distance or make them feel guilty for processing emotions differently. That doesn't mean you tolerate emotional neglect or abandon your own needs. It simply means you stop begging for validation because you've already learned to give it to yourself. Instead of reacting with panic, you respond with understanding. You spend less time trying to diagnose them and more time listening. Rather than asking, "Why are you like this?" your attitude becomes, "I know this isn't easy for you." That isn't weakness, it's emotional strength. It takes far more courage to love with awareness than to love through control. There's a huge difference between possessive love and compassionate love. Possessive love quietly says, "I'll feel secure when you satisfy my emotional needs." Healthy love says, "I want the best for you while you continue growing into the person you're becoming." That's a more mature kind of love. It's conscious, patient, and respectful. It's also the kind of love that has the greatest chance of reaching an avoidant's heart. And something remarkable often happens. When you stop treating them like a problem to solve, they begin seeing you differently. You become emotionally safe. You become the peaceful presence they never realized they were searching for. That sense of calm naturally draws them closer. Not because you convinced them, because you gave them room. Instead of chasing love, you began embodying it. Your quiet confidence spoke louder than endless conversations ever could. Remember this. People don't heal because someone pressured them into changing. They heal because someone created an environment where they finally felt safe enough to grow. When people feel accepted without constant judgment, their body begins relaxing. Their thoughts become quieter. Little by little, closeness starts feeling comforting instead of threatening. That's when genuine healing begins. Not because someone rescued them, but because they finally experience the safety to heal themselves. The deeper lesson about love is often the opposite of what we've been taught. Many people believe loving someone means fixing their flaws or helping them become who we think they should be. But mature love isn't about reshaping another person until they fit our expectations. It's about standing beside them with patience while allowing their own growth to happen naturally. Your actions become the lesson. Your calm becomes the example. Your consistency becomes proof that peaceful love really exists. Sometimes the most loving response is saying less, doing less, and refusing to let fear control your reactions when they create distance. Every fearful response reinforces their belief that intimacy brings pressure. Every calm response teaches them that closeness can also bring safety. So when you say, "I see who you are, and I'm not trying to change you," you're not giving up on the relationship. You're choosing maturity. You're choosing connection instead of control. You're saying, "I care enough to let you be yourself, even when it challenges my own comfort." That isn't surrender, it's emotional strength. The reality is simple. You cannot heal someone who doesn't feel emotionally safe. But you can become part of the environment that allows them to feel safe enough to begin healing themselves. It starts with your own emotional state, your boundaries, your patience, and your understanding that love isn't about rescuing another person. It's about respecting them. The next time you feel tempted to chase, over-explain, or solve everything, pause for a moment. Take a breath. Remember that acceptance isn't passive. It's one of the strongest expressions of love a person can offer. If you can hold that peaceful space consistently, there may come a day when the avoidant who once feared closeness realizes something profound. You were never the danger. You were the place where they finally felt at peace. Eventually, every relationship reaches a moment that changes everything. With an avoidant, that moment often comes when you stop needing them to choose you. That's when you realize that chasing isn't love. It is fear disguised as devotion. Avoidants are rarely drawn toward relentless pursuit. They're drawn toward people who remain grounded in their own worth. For someone who has spent years protecting themselves from emotional chaos, quiet confidence feels incredibly comforting. Once you stop chasing, something changes inside you as well. You stop searching for reassurance. You stop trying to prove your value. Instead, you begin living from it. Without speaking a word, your energy says, "I'll be okay whether you stay or leave." That quiet certainty communicates more than endless explanations ever could. It reflects genuine emotional independence. And deep down, that's exactly the kind of stability many avoidants long for, even if they don't know how to ask for it. The truth is, most avoidants aren't intentionally trying to hurt the people they love. They're not creating distance to play games or seek control. More often, they're protecting themselves from emotional intensity that feels overwhelming. Long ago, they learned to associate deep closeness with losing their sense of control. Creating space became their survival strategy. Everything begins changing when you stop reacting every time they pull away. When your peace no longer depends on their behavior, the emotional pattern shifts completely. Avoidants often try to manage closeness because unpredictability once made love feel unsafe. But when you remain calm, steady, and emotionally grounded instead of chasing after them, something powerful begins to unfold. You become a source of calm they've likely never experienced before. Instead of adding to the emotional confusion they've spent years trying to escape, you represent something completely different. That's when fear slowly gives way to curiosity. Think about human nature for a moment. People naturally become interested in what they can't easily predict or control. When you remain emotionally grounded, your steady presence becomes unfamiliar in the best possible way. That quiet confidence isn't something they know how to manipulate, and because of that, it stands out. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, genuine peace often feels both unfamiliar and deeply comforting. They're drawn toward it because it offers something new without making them feel threatened. Without needing long conversations or repeated reassurance, you're showing them that love doesn't require either person to lose themselves. You're demonstrating a healthier version of connection, one built on stability, emotional balance, and mutual freedom instead of pressure. This is where love becomes something much deeper. Real love isn't built on emotional dependence. It's created when two emotionally whole people freely choose one another, rather than two wounded people desperately trying to fill each other's emptiness. When you truly embrace the belief that you'll be okay whether they stay or leave, you're not rejecting them. You're honoring what healthy love actually is. Love that constantly demands attention isn't love, it's attachment. Healthy love creates room for both people to breathe. It respects boundaries, remains steady through uncertainty, and allows connection to grow naturally instead of forcing it. An avoidant notices that change. They recognize when you stop explaining yourself over and over. They notice when you no longer seek their approval. They feel the difference when your emotional peace isn't determined by how they respond. That's often the moment their perception of you begins to change. You're no longer someone trying to pull them closer. You become someone who genuinely understands their inner world. And that matters, because one of an avoidant's deepest fears is becoming overwhelmed by another person's emotional needs. When they see that you're capable of loving without abandoning yourself, you become one of the safest people they've ever encountered. The irony is hard to miss. What often draws an avoidant back isn't relentless pursuit. It's your inner peace. It's your decision to stop chasing, stop pleading, and stop trying to earn your place in their life. That quiet confidence creates a powerful shift. Deep down, most avoidants don't actually want to stay guarded forever. They grow tired of always protecting themselves. They want to experience closeness without feeling like they'll lose who they are. Your emotional steadiness gives them a glimpse of that possibility. The psychological shift behind this is remarkable. The moment you stop depending on someone else's validation, your own nervous system begins settling down. You move away from reacting through fear and start responding with emotional balance. As your calm becomes genuine, theirs often begins reflecting it. This process is known as co-regulation. When one person's emotional stability helps another person's nervous system relax, both people begin feeling safer together. Without trying to teach them anything directly, you're showing them what peaceful love actually feels like. Not through speeches, not through persuasion, simply through the energy you consistently bring into the relationship. That's the real strength of emotional maturity. You stop chasing emotional reactions and start leading with quiet confidence. Your actions silently communicate, "I choose peace instead of panic." That message carries more weight than endless conversations. It builds something avoidants value deeply: respect. At their core, many avoidants aren't looking for someone who depends on them emotionally. They're looking for someone who can stand beside them without making them responsible for another person's emotional survival. That's what earns trust. And trust is what slowly opens the door to genuine intimacy. The truth is, avoidants aren't searching for someone who disappears emotionally every time distance appears. They appreciate someone who remains steady, someone who stays grounded when space is needed, someone whose confidence isn't determined by constant closeness, but by a stable sense of self. That's what leaves a lasting impression. That's what makes someone unforgettable in a world where so many relationships are driven by insecurity, noise, and emotional urgency. But here's the most important lesson. You don't become this person simply to bring an avoidant back. You become this person because you've grown. You've learned that peace has far greater power than pursuit. You've realized that self-respect speaks louder than pleading for attention ever could. Whether they eventually return is no longer the center of your life. The real success is discovering your own emotional strength. Once you reach that level of self-worth, you stop performing to deserve love. You stop trying to earn what should always be offered freely. You stop pursuing people who mistake healthy peace for emotional distance or confuse love with control. When that transformation happens inside you, every relationship begins changing because you've changed first. If there's one message an avoidant quietly needs to feel after you've stopped chasing, it's this: I care about you deeply, but my happiness doesn't depend on whether you choose me. That truth brings freedom to both people. Because love isn't measured by how hard someone pursues. It's measured by the peace they bring into each other's lives. Eventually, a quiet realization arrives. Love was never meant to be a prison. It has always been a choice. For an avoidant, reaching that understanding can take time, because their past often taught them something very different. Their experiences may have connected love with losing control, being emotionally overwhelmed, or reliving painful patterns from earlier in life. For many avoidants, love has never felt like freedom. Instead, it has often felt restrictive. But everything begins to change when you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and stop trying to prove your worth. Without realizing it, you start changing what love represents to them. Your calm confidence and emotional steadiness send a powerful message. I'm not here to control you, I'm choosing you freely, and you're free to choose me too. That shift makes love feel safe instead of overwhelming. Avoidants don't respond well to pressure, they respond to peace. The more you push for closeness, the more likely they are to withdraw. But when you give them space while staying emotionally grounded, they begin to lower their guard. Your quiet presence teaches that love doesn't have to control or persuade. It can exist while giving both people room to breathe. Many of us confuse intensity with intimacy, yet real connection only happens when both people stay because they genuinely want to, not because fear keeps them together. The tighter you hold on, the more distance you often create. But when you let go with trust instead of resentment, you give love the space it needs to grow. Deep down, avoidants don't crave distance. They crave freedom within connection. They want to know they can love someone without losing themselves. When your energy shifts from control to quiet confidence, you show them that healthy love protects independence instead of taking it away. What they remember isn't the pleading or the endless explanations. They remember your peace. Instead of saying, "I need you," your actions say, "I truly see you." That creates trust, and trust is where lasting intimacy begins. Real love isn't possession, it's freedom with commitment. It allows both people to choose each other willingly. The strongest message you can give an avoidant is, "If you need to leave, I still wish you peace." That's not weakness, it's emotional maturity. It shows that your love isn't built on fear or control. When you stop trying to convince someone to stay, you finally stand in your own worth. Love, rooted in freedom, doesn't need to be chased. The right person will choose you willingly, wholeheartedly, and without fear.